With us now is Republican Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, kind enough to join us. Senator, how you doing?
Okay, Neil, how are you?
Very good, sir. First of all, your reaction to this ticket, JD Vance, all of 39 years old. What do you make of it?
JD's a good guy. He's smart. He's obviously well educated. If I had to pick one word to describe JD, it would be sagacious. And by that I mean he's very thoughtful, he's very deliberate, he's not emotional, he thinks his positions through very carefully, and he can defend them. I'm not surprised that President Trump picked him because of all the people mentioned. I think JD's policies are the most in line with President Trump. The only person I can think of that might be better than JD is Caitlin Clark, and she's got a day job.
You know, Senator, a lot of people are surprised at this choice, if only because they thought, you know, Donald Trump would have a long memory and remember critical things that JD Vance had said of him, you know, some years back. Obviously, he has taken back a lot of those remarks, but it is rather remarkable to think that, you know, Donald Trump would do this. A lot of his critics said, oh, no, he won't pick anyone who has said anything unkind about him. He proved that wrong with this pick, as he did inviting Nikki Haley not only to the convention, but to speak at the convention. You know Donald Trump better than most people. Is this a surprise to you?
No. I've talked to the president a couple of times over the past few weeks. I thought he would pick someone who, number one, is young. That's going to be an issue in this race. And I thought he would pick someone whose points of view are more akin to President Trump. And I've always thought JD had the inside track. That's not to take away from anybody else, but I'm not at all surprised about JD.
The JD Vance himself has been very critical of our ongoing, concerns around Ukraine and spending good money after bad. He didn't term it like that, Senator, but that he felt that this was a mission that maybe is getting close to being exhausted. We don't know exactly where Donald Trump is on this. He has promised if he does get elected president, he will end this in short order. That is the war in Ukraine. Early in the campaign, he talked about doing it on his very first day. But now we have two like-minded parts of this ticket, the president and the vice president, who share this view that we got to rethink Ukraine. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we ought to always be thinking about how to stop Putin and stop President Xi in China and stop the Ayatollah in Iran. My experience with JD on the issue has been that he's willing to listen. He's willing to hear points of view other than his. He's willing to test his assumptions against the arguments of his critics. He's not an emotional guy. He's sagacious. I chose that word carefully. Right. He's very thoughtful and very deliberate. And my experience with President Trump on critical issues is very similar to that. And again, I come back to the point of all the people mentioned that I've heard talked about the vice president. I think JD Vance's points of view are the most similar to President Trump's. Given that, his intellect, he's a cerebral guy, and his age, he's a young man, I wasn't surprised. He's a good guy. I like JD.
So here we are, only 48 hours after this assassination attempt on Donald Trump. We have this very unified convention, perhaps even more so because of that nightmare. And I'm wondering how you see the party going forward, especially if some of these signs you pointed out, Senator, of a ticket that has very, very hard views on foreign policy, on NATO commitments, on commitments to Ukraine, maybe rethinking how we go about dealing with Israel and the ongoing Mideast war there. But everyone seems to be on the same page that this is the book they want to read going forward. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think what we ought to talk about are the things that moms and dads worry about at night when they lie down to sleep and can't. Inflation, it's a cancer on the American dream. President Biden has dissolved our southern border. Crime is still an issue. It's better in some parts of our country, but it's still not well. People are worried about America's place in the world. The aggression of Russia, the aggression of China, the aggression of the Ayatollah in the Middle East. We need to, and we also need to talk about America. People are tired of being called a racist or a bigot or a misogynist because they love this country. And I think we ought to hit those issues head on.
This would probably be the start of just that. Senator, thank you very much. Very good talking to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.